Hello, my name is Naliti Saul, and I'm the Director of the UCSF Office of Career and Professional Development. This tutorial focuses on explaining how you, as a mentor, can assess how inclusive you've been throughout your mentoring relationship. Now, there's this pithy quote that says, "Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an act, and belonging is an outcome." I want to focus in on this statement that says inclusion is an act. So what intentional actions can you take to be more inclusive? The good news is that pretty much every single inclusive decision and act seems to map to one of 5 buckets or strategies. They include A, adding respect, B, adding diverse voices, C, adding objectivity, D, leveling the playing field, and E, offering protection. Which means that a mentor can think about any mentoring task, from meeting with their mentee and developing goals to giving advice or introducing them to their network, and consider what intentional decisions and proactive actions they can take to infuse one of these 5 strategies into that interaction. So say you're about to have a first meeting with your mentee. As I describe some of the possible actions to be inclusive, consider which of these actions you're already taking and which additional steps might be possible in your situation. Now, the first strategy is called adding respect, which can be defined as acknowledging or making space for people to bring their full selves to work. This could include their identity, their values, their preferences, their barriers, their reality, etc. It also includes valuing their contribution, which could include things like their energy, their effort, their expertise, their time, or their perspective. Now, here are 5 potential tangible steps that a mentor could take. The first one is simple. It just involves using your mentee's preferred name and pronouncing it correctly. You can ask, do you prefer Beyonce or Bey? Is it Lena or Lena? Whatever they say, make an effort to remember it. Secondly, you could also ask what pronouns they prefer to use. And once again, do your best to consistently use those pronouns. 3, you can ask them what they feel their main barriers are to succeeding. It could be time limitations or feeling overwhelmed. Whatever they share, rather than minimize it, acknowledge it, thank them for sharing it, and consider how it impacts your mentoring relationship. 4, you can value their values and their work. Are they always engaged or open-minded or reliable? Recognize it. For example, you could say, "I always appreciate how you try to be solution-oriented," or "always try to understand all sides of a situation." Whatever it is, your recognition is meaningful to them. 5, you could actually demonstrate and model how to admit your mistakes. So for example, if you're running late, you can say, "Thank you for waiting. I know your time is valuable. What should we prioritize with the time that we have?" Are you wrong about something? Say, "I got that wrong. I'm sorry." As the senior person in the relationship, you don't have to do this. But if that's the behavior you want from them, then that's the behavior that you'll have to model to them. Adding respect means that you acknowledge that each person deserves to be treated with decency and civility. The second strategy is called adding diverse voices. This means adding more perspectives to the decision-making process and the relationship in general. Here are 3 examples of that. The first is simply adding your mentee's voice to the conversation. For example, you could ask them about their goals. Rather than set goals for your mentee, even if they ask you to do so, you could share different types of mentee goals and help your mentee define which personal, professional, and academic goals you'll be working on together. Second, you can ask your mentee about their expectations or preferences about how your relationship will work. For example, how or how often would your mentee prefer to communicate with you? What support do they want from you? Be open to considering their request. Finally, adding diverse voices could also mean you tapping into your circle of support. Is there something your mentee is doing that's concerning or bothering you? Reach out to your own circle of support and get their perspective on it before you judge or try to change your mentee's thinking. Adding diverse voices recognizes that due to the power differential between you and your mentee, your relationship could tip to only favor your goals and your preferences. And that's not good, even if you are only trying to help. Intentionally adding others' voices can help maintain a healthy balance in your mentoring relationship. The third strategy can be summarized as adding objectivity. This is where you add accountability or transparency to a situation, which could include records, metrics, benchmarks, or checks and balances. Here are 2 potential tactics. The first is to keep track. Once your mentee decides on 1 to 3 goals for your mentoring relationship, you can keep track of any progress towards those goals and remind them of it, particularly when things get difficult. You might say, I know you've been feeling overwhelmed, but I want to remind you that one of your goals was to feel more comfortable giving patient education around X. And based on our conversations today, it sounds like you made significant progress towards that goal, and you should feel proud. You can be the person who acknowledges progress. Secondly, perhaps you could also serve as an accountability partner, providing check-ins around small, achievable mini goals for your mentee. For example, you could say, why don't you email me later this week when you do X? Adding objectivity helps both you and your mentee retain perspective and offers recognition and support towards their goals. The fourth set of tactics can be described as leveling the playing field. Here, you create a situation in which you use your agency to give your mentee a fair and equal chance of succeeding. Here are 2 examples of that. For example, you might signal your own expectations and preferences to help your mentee understand how to have a successful relationship with you. For example, if you expect your mentee to respond to email within 24 hours, or you prefer that they bring a topic of discussion to every meeting, it helps when you explicitly ask them to do so. There is no universal norm about, quote, how mentoring works, unquote, or what, quote, being professional is, unquote. Another example of leveling the playing field is sharing your own experience in navigating a situation to help them understand their options. For example, you could say, here are 5 things I did to prepare for any new rotation. Or let me tell you about the strategies that I or my friends use to study for our boards. Or perhaps you might introduce your mentee to someone in your network who has that advice or an opportunity. Leveling the playing field helps a person navigate skillfully an unfamiliar or complex situation. The final inclusive strategy is offering protection. The goal of offering protection is to prevent someone from suffering harm or injury, or to prevent them from damaging a person, a relationship, a culture, or a community. Here are 2 possible tactics. Now, when mentors hear about offering protection, they usually think about protecting their mentee from other people. But one of the most useful things you can do is to tell them how they can be safe with you. For example, you could explain how they could have difficult conversations with you. You could say, if there's ever something you feel you need to tell me and you're concerned about how to raise the topic, please start by signaling, I have some news or a question that I'm concerned that you may find difficult. I promise that whatever you say after that will be met with the response, can you say more about that? And whatever you say, I promise to listen. Another example is to simply validate a person's experience. If your mentee is going through a difficult situation or being gaslit, acknowledge it, even if you can't stop it, because just your willingness to recognize what is happening can protect your mentee's mental health. When you offer protection, you use your knowledge, your contacts, your resources, your skills, and your expertise to help your mentees succeed. Now, the key to being inclusive is recognizing that no one action is the linchpin between your mentee experiencing your mentorship as inclusive or not inclusive. It's the layering of multiple decisions and actions that reaches a critical mass and creates a protected space, or a bubble, if you will, where your mentee will feel seen and heard, respected and safe, connected and valued. When someone uses their agency to act inclusively, the result is the same for all of us. We feel set up for success, and we feel as if we belong. So I invite you, the next time you're giving your mentee feedback or sending them an email, when you're meeting with them or connecting them to your network, or maybe just even helping them navigate a challenge, to think about how you can intentionally add inclusivity to that interaction. Literally take 10 minutes before the interaction and ask yourself, what can I do to add respect? Add diverse voices, add objectivity, level the playing field, or offer protection to my mentee in our interactions or in their world. But I also hope you'll recognize that you've probably already been engaging in several tangible steps to be an inclusive mentor. And the next time someone asks, you'll be able to use this framework to identify which of the 5 overall strategies and which specific actions you've taken, which have resulted in you creating a culture of inclusivity in your community and in your mentoring relationship. And that is what you need to know about being inclusive.